Hey everyone, and welcome to another video. I am Simply G, and today I'm going to be talking about all of the books and everything else that I got for February. There's so much here, guys. I don't know. Okay, so rather than spend too long on this intro, I'm gonna get straight into it, and I hope you guys enjoy. First and foremost, it is clear file season again, which basically just means that I got a bunch of the free birthday clear files that I had bought and was sitting in my Japanese proxy for a while. So finally shipped it to myself, and so we have Ichiro Nitori, who is part of the Samazuka team. We have Hiyori Tono, who is part of he's part of one of the university teams. He shows up in the third season. For those who don't follow Free very closely, he's one of the newer characters. And then we have Rin Matsuoka, obviously one of the main characters of the franchise in general. These three have their birthdays early on in the year, so I think these two have January birthdays, and then Rin has a February birthday. They're not real people, right? Obviously. But once again, Kyoto Animation knows how to get my money. I do think that this line of artwork is a little, not boring, but just plain compared to some of the other birthday art we've seen in the past. But I think there's a couple more in the series to be released, but I think the last one, which is Kisumi, has just gone up for pre-orders. So I think this round, quote unquote, of merchandise is over, and I don't know whether or not they'll continue it after this, just because Free is over, right? There's not any more Free, and there's probably not going to be any more Free. There doesn't need to be any more Free. But regardless, happy to have these three and to continue my clear file collection as per usual. Next, we have some figures. It's been a little while since I've gotten figures, I feel like. Obviously because they're typically expensive. I do have quite a few maybe in this coming year, but that's because they keep making things that I'm interested in. So the first one that I got this month is a scale figure from Kotobukiya, I think. And this is a 1/8 scale of Greedling from Fullmetal Alchemist, specifically Fullmetal Alchemist Brotherhood, the newer adaptation of the manga, but obviously this is a manga character, and he looks great. There's a couple other characters who have gotten scale figures in this lineup. I have a scale of Edward already, but he's from Mega House, I believe. And then I do have the Roy and Riza scale from this line. There's also a Fuhrer Bradley scale from this line, although I'm not that into that, so I haven't ordered that. But I'm interested to see if they continue expanding this particular line of figures, whether it's through by Kotobukiya or Mega House or whomever else. I think a lot of this has been spurred on by recent anniversary for Fullmetal Alchemist. So yeah, I can't complain. This is the series that is, for long-time viewers, this is very near and dear to my heart. I absolutely love Fullmetal Alchemist, and I'm really happy that we're getting some high-quality merchandise for the first time, because we didn't have that for a long time. So yeah, great to have him, and he looks great. This actually came with like a additional deluxe base. It's just like a round plastic circle. You put batteries in, and it glows. Like it has a red light underneath it, so it's meant to be, you know, an illuminating and dynamic addition to the figure. It's fine. I don't I don't really care about any of that. And there's no edition that doesn't include that, at least not that I'm aware of. So similarly, the Roy and Riza figure had a base like that, I believe. Either that or the Ed and Al scale from this line did. One of them, I don't really remember, but all I know is that it's not really something that I use or care about, so I am probably not going to use it ever. But it's a good addition for those who are wanting that. I just feel like it's a little bit of a waste. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. The quality of this figure is great, and really happy to have kind of one of the lesser popular characters from the series get some love. I have a really new figure, although she's been out for a little while. It took forever for her to get to me, although I did buy her from a local seller, so that's maybe why. We've had a lot of issues with the postal service here, and not just because of COVID. We've had like train line flooding and all sorts of things, so a lot of mail has been delayed, and unfortunately she was one of them, but she's finally made it. She's finally made it home, and this is, I don't quite remember what her like official name is, but this is a Hatsune Miku figure by Mythos. It's a 1/7 scale. I want to say I don't remember. Apologies. I call her Chinese Miku, like, obviously, because this is it's a Mythos product who, if you're not familiar, is actually a Hong Kong figure manufacturer, and I really love their work. I have a couple figures from them, actually. One of my first scale figures was a Mythos that I didn't even realize. And I just bought at the time because it was really aesthetically pleasing, and now this is kind of in that same camp where obviously I know who Hatsune Miku is, but I don't follow Vocaloid. I've never been like really into Vocaloid, especially not compared to like some other people and what you typically see from like anime fandoms. But she's just so beautiful. It's just such a gorgeous piece, and so highly detailed. And the great thing about Mythos, and I think Chinese manufacturers of figures just generally, or non-Japanese figure producers, I should say, is that, you know, it's not nearly as expensive. Prices on figures have gone up a lot over the last several years, and even more so thanks to COVID. And there's plenty of Japanese figures that I'm still eyeing, but it does make it easier to kind of step away from the hobby when things just are priced so ridiculously. But regardless, she's gorgeous, beautiful. This is a figure that got a lot of attention. A lot of people have bought her and have, you know, added her to their figures for great reason. She's highly detailed, beautifully painted, just a perfect piece. So we have an art book, technically, sort of. This is one that I was really excited for. I'm really excited for the follow-up as well. This is Scribbles, Volume 1 by Kaoru Mori. This is a collection of the Scribbles, they're like magazine editions or gifts with certain volumes of Harta that contained Mori's scribbles or her rough art. And she is a phenomenal artist. If you're not familiar with Kaoru Mori, she's the mangaka of A Bride Story as well as Emma, or Emma Victorian Romance. She also has another series called Shirley, which was once licensed in English, but was never continued be licensed since the death of CMX. But that's neither here nor there. She's also had a single volume, Anything and Something, which is a short story collection. I'm a big Mori fan, so much so actually that this month's podcast is about her, that I co-host with my good friend Whimsical Pictures. And this, as I said, is just a collection of some of her raw, sketchy art. It's so gorgeous. I adore her stuff. A lot of original pieces, but also some stuff from Emma, from A Bride Story, from Shirley. You really get a feeling for her attention to detail, her lushness in her art. She really knows how to capture the female form in a very aesthetically pleasing way. She's fantastic, a phenomenal artist, and I highly recommend this little booklet to anyone who's interested, because this edition, so there's two versions of this book. There's this edition, which is just like the standard paperback copy. It's only like 800 yen or 880. And then there's the wideband version, which I think might be hardcover. I don't know, but it's a lot larger, and that's closer to like 2,400 yen, which I think has been released to coincide with the wideband new editions of Mori's manga. I would love to own the larger art book of this and its follow-up, Scribbles 2, which hasn't quite yet been released. Maybe it has, but I haven't gotten my copy yet. But I just can't really justify the price for that right now. And I couldn't not have this in the collection. It's fantastic. I used to own all of the single, actual Scribbles little paper, little tiny little booklets that were included in the magazines. And so this is literally those just put into a collected volume. And there's just so much to enjoy. So I highly recommend this if you're a fan of Kaoru Mori. I also highly recommend it if you're just a fan of beautiful art, but also understanding artists and how they build characters, or how they show movement, show certain things, whether it be fabric or fine details or body shapes. It's phenomenal, just phenomenal. Also animals, she's so good at drawing animals. But yeah, check out Scribbles Volume 1 and 2 once it's released. On to the manga itself. I got so much manga this month, but part of that is due to so I will preface this by saying that I was following the series that I'm about to show off via a library that I frequent on a semi-regular basis. And that library often has used or ex-library copy sales, right? To be able to fund new books and whatever else. And I haven't, I've bought maybe a couple things from them before, and they do have a very large manga range there. So it is a library that I go to a lot for manga. So this was a series that I was following there, and it's also a series that doesn't have a digital edition, or at least not a complete digital edition. But then the last time I went there, I haven't been for quite a while, but the most recent time I went there, I saw that the series was in their sale pile, and it was pretty much the entirety of the series, and I wanted to keep reading it. So I bought it. It was disgustingly cheap because it's like $1 a book or fill a bag for $5. And no matter how many books that is, anything over 5 is just automatically $5. So I got pretty much an entire series for $5. There was a couple of the later volumes that I did buy separately, just because, again, I do want to finish this series. But ultimately, this is a series that I don't necessarily think I'm going to hold on to forever. I enjoy it. It's very funny. It's quite sweet and like upbeat. And I do like this mangaka. I enjoy some of her other work. But I don't, like, I enjoy that other work more than I enjoy this. And this one is long. So rather than beat around the bush, I am talking about Odasama Teacher by Izumi Tsubaki. This is the mangaka of Monthly Girls Nozaki-kun. And this is the story of a high school girl who, she's a bit of a, like in her hometown, she's a bit of a delinquent. She's actually like the boss, right? Like she's in charge of all of the bad kids at her school. And she gets into trouble. Her mom decides to send her away for high school. And she's like, I'm actually gonna like clean myself up. I'm gonna have like this brilliant high school debut. And she gets there and she's like, no one knows my dark past and I'm actually going to really try and better myself and blah, blah, blah. And she discovers that her homeroom teacher is one of her childhood friends / neighbors. And he's the boy that like taught her how to fight and taught her how to, like be really rough and tumble. But now he's this like pretty dedicated high school teacher. So it's a funny series about this girl who she's trying her best to like leave her past behind her, but obviously her teacher knows exactly who she is, and he's, known her and her personality. He knows the realities of this. But anyway, so this school that she's attending is this guy, his grandfather like established this school, and so he's trying to get control back after like the current principal. There's been issues, right? Like he's made a bet that if he boosts attendance at the school, because attendance has been falling, that he will take over the school, because otherwise the current principal, I think, wants to sell the school to developers so that like a hotel or like a land development can happen there. It's been a while since I read these first volumes, so apologies. Anyway, so as part of that, he kind of blackmails this high school girl, our main character, into joining what is called the Public Morals Club. Or public morale, maybe. Either way, same difference, right? And so she and then a couple other kids, a couple other, oddballs and weirdos, who become her friends, they all start to join. And then there's this kind of friction between the student council and the student council president. He's the son of the current principal, so there's like a bunch of stuff going on. It's fun, it's funny. Our main character, she has to she's living this double life of just being like a normal high school girl, but then also being this like really tough and amazing like delinquent fighter. But she doesn't want her friends to know that, so she dresses up and pretends to be this like mystery fighter, kind of like a masked wrestler called Super Bun. It's just kind of a weird, quirky comedy. I don't think it's necessarily hilarious. It does have a lot of like really solid jokes. It's good for a decent chuckle. But I will say, as I previously mentioned, I do enjoy Nozaki-kun way more. This is an earlier work, So maybe that's just a reflection of how she's grown in her comedy. But there is still like a lot to like for the series. So we have volume 1. Volume 2. Volume... I'm gonna have to... There's a lot of volumes here, so apologies. 3. 4. 5. And yeah, all of these, almost all of these were ex-library. They came out pretty good. They cleaned up really well. I'm 6. So I don't feel too bad if these find a new home, you know, in a year or so. Once I actually get around to finishing it. Volume 7. Volume 8. We've got Student Council President on the cover there. Volume 9. Volume 10. Volume 11. Volume 12. We're not even halfway through yet, guys. Volume 13. Volume 14, which is pretty much halfway mark. Volume 15 was one of the volumes that I had to buy new. This is the only like middle volume that was missing, which is kind of amazing. And then the last, or the rest, we go back to library stuff. So we have volume 16. 17. 18. This is the most recent one I've read. Volume 18. So still got a ways to go. Volume 19. And it's interesting that here is like where we get the real shift in covers. I don't know whether that was just a shoujo beat change or what, but we have much nicer covers, I think, from here on. 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25, and 26 is the last library copy that I have. So this is the last volume they had in this library sale. So I got all of those except for 15. And then finally I have also volume 27. And volume 29, which is the final one. Volume 28 is on its way. I've ordered it because, again, I'm going to read it, and there's literally no like Kindle version for this from the last probably 15 or so volumes. I don't know why they made that switch. I wouldn't have any insight, but it's decently funny. Like, it's a good time. If you're a fan of this creator, you might want to check it out, especially if you're interested in older works. Yeah, it's good for a chuckle, and there's some really decent character moments. I think it's got a great cast of characters, similarly to Nozaki-kun. So give it a look if it sounds interesting to you. And it's also super long, but complete. So maybe that makes a difference. I don't know. next we have another full series that I bought. So this is the second completed series that I bought. I mean, technically Odasama isn't like completed, but I've bought all the volumes, so it's completed in my heart. But this one is one that I was pretty curious about. I like this is another instance where I enjoy the mangaka's other work, her previous work, her current work. So this was one that was in the middle that I just hadn't tried. It's quite well liked. I know a couple people within my sort of small circle of folks I follow that are really into it. And I liked the premise. I thought it was curious. I wanted to see how how the execution would be. And I've read it since. I liked it. I don't know that I will keep it around for super long. I do prefer her other works. But I'm glad that I tried it. I'm glad that I gave it the full read that I wanted to. This is one that I picked up. So the reason I got this is not just for pure curiosity's sake. There was a sale, like quite a large sale at one of the comic stores that I regularly frequent locally. So I decided this was one of the series that they had on sale. They had almost every volume. I think I had to buy one or two from other websites and stuff. But for the most part, I got this for, I think it was 2 for 1. Maybe. I can't quite remember. But yeah, so this is Toma's The Water Dragon's Bride. So this is about a girl who is from like modern day Japan, Asahi. And when she's young, like really young, 6 or 7 years old, she gets kind of like spirited away or isekai'd into this odd fantasy world. She falls into her family's pond in their backyard, right? And she wakes up in this strange, I say fantasy world. It's really not. It's more so like just ancient Japan. Like it's like 1,000 years in the past. And she's, lost and confused, and that young doesn't really have any idea of what's going on. But she comes across a boy from one of the local villages, and he's very quick to, like, try and help her, but he has some family issues. His mother's really not keen on welcoming this strange young girl, especially because she looks so different from everyone. She's got this bright red pink hair, and she stands out. Anyway, so a couple days into her being stuck in this past version of Japan, and she is chosen to become the human sacrifice, right, for the water dragon. She will be the water dragon's newest bride. And so, despite this young boy's like best efforts, she is thrown into the lake and is sacrificed for, as tended to happen, right? She's a human sacrifice for the gods. But she wakes up and she's in the water dragon or the water god's realm. And he's quite, I don't know, he's a bit curious about this young human. He's like, oh, this is the new bride, but she's so different from, everyone else who's been sent to him. And also she's like just super duper young. But he, in his godly ways, doesn't really understand humans or human emotions. So there's this kind of a standoff between the two where he just totally ignores her. She almost dies of starvation. There's a whole bunch of stuff. But ultimately, the little boy from the town comes and rescues her. And the other gods are telling off the water god about, like, oh, he can't do that. Like, you... Anyway, she gets rescued. She ends up back with humans. But she's obviously traumatized from this whole thing that happened. She stops being able to speak. There might be some other specifications there, or specificity there, but I don't really remember. Anyway, it's the kind of slow burn romance between this girl and the water dragon, right? That she's his bride. She gets, or he grants her this power to, whenever she cries, it brings rain, which then, in the eyes of like the normal people of this civilization or of this era, she's seen as being gifted with like godly powers, so she becomes quite a well loved and well respected like priestess. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. Meanwhile, she's also trying to proactively return home. She doesn't want to be stuck in the past like this, and she misses her family, she misses her parents, and she cares about the people in the current era, especially her like one friend, who obviously like has a crush on her, the boy from the village. But you know, she cares about all of these different people, and over time as well, because we have a time skip, right, to when she's 16 or 18 or something, 10 years in the future maybe. And so how her life has changed being in this situation, and how her relationship has changed with all these different people. So we have volume 1, which is very pretty, very soft colored cover. We have volume 2. And so for those who don't know, Reitoma is the mangaka of Dawn of the Arcana. That was her first work, or at least her first work available in English. This is volume 3. And her current work is a series from that same universe of Dawn of the Arcana, The King's Beast, which is phenomenal. And out of all 3 of the series, that's definitely my favorite. That one's still ongoing, though, so who knows what will happen. But that one's really, really good. And I'll actually talk about it a little bit more as well. But volume 4, volume 5... volume 6, but it's kind of interesting to read all of her works from Dawn of the Arcana till now to see how much her art style developed and improved, because it really, really did. Volume 7, volume 8. So we have sort of the, I don't want to say villains of the piece, but some of the antagonists of the piece on that cover. We have volume 9. Volume 10. And finally, volume 11. So yeah, obviously, last volume. If you are reading The King's Beast, there's a one-shot, like a sequel one-shot for The Water and Dragon's Bride at the end of volume 1 as well. So, you know, if you're a fan of one and maybe not the other, then that's perhaps an explanation there. I do think this is worth reading. I think it's very well done. I think there's a lot of really interesting moments. It's a little bit lighter on some of the themes and elements, but it does feel a little bit like within the vein of a Yona of the Dawn, or probably more closely something like 12 Kingdoms for that isekai kind of element. I wouldn't say it's as good as either of those, but it is a pretty... it's not a unique premise, first off, but it's somewhat forgotten in this current era of shoujo and shoujo fantasy, and even like isekai. It's nice to have a female-focused isekai again. But yeah, check it out. It is very good, very strong. It might not be to everyone's taste, especially like how the romance develops and like the like love triangle stuff works itself out. But that's kind of inevitable when you have this set up anyway. It's good. Like, ultimately I enjoyed it. I did like it a lot, and I love her other works, so it is worth reading, especially if you're a fan already of hers. I would say it's probably the art-wise, Dawn of the Arcana is still like the roughest, quote unquote. It's certainly the least developed, but the story, I think, in this one, it's well handled. I think there was potential for it to go longer, but I also think that there might have been, it might have gotten too unwieldy if it went on too much longer than the 11 volumes. I don't know. I don't have answers. But yeah, do try it if it sounds like something you're interested in. It is worth reading at least once, so maybe check it out from your library. To the ongoing manga, standard trim size stuff, and I think I'm just going to continue from the last point with another Raitomo series, and this is The King's Beast Volume 4 and 5. 5 is the most recent in English. I love this series so much. This is the story of a young Ajin girl called Rangetsu, who, when she hits her teens, she pretends to be a boy in order to join the palace as a bodyguard for the fourth prince, and in order to find out and who killed her brother, her twin brother, in their youth when he was a bodyguard for the fourth prince 10 or so years ago. This is a really good series. It's beautiful. As I said, the art in this is just magnificent. I'll open it up. It's just gorgeous. I love it so much. The fine detailing on some of these panels is just so lovely. But yeah, so it's this sort of Mulan-esque story of revenge, wherein, so for those who aren't familiar with Dawn of the Arcana or The King's Beast or any series that use Ajin, right? They are a like race of people who have these animal physicalities, so typically like an ears and tail, right? As you can see on the cover here, and they typically have like they're stronger, they're more physically able-bodied or whatever, right? So within the societies of the series, they're typically seen as like a servant class. A lot of them are just used as military or as whatever else. That was the case in Dawn of the Arcana, which kind of had a more European setting. This series, the setting is more like Asian influenced, but also not only are like the male Ajin or the Ajin men used as like, yeah, laborers and military and whatever else, the women are kind of seen as just, they're typically prostitutes, right? They're just second-class citizens. I mean, all of Ajin are second-class citizens, but women kind of have it even worse, and so this is why Rangetsu has pretended to be a boy, because obviously she wants to get revenge, but she doesn't have any of the powers that her brother did, and so she's just had to like really improve her physical fighting and things like that. But since entering the palace, she's become quite conflicted while she's trying to figure out, who caused her brother's death, and now she's trying to figure it out along with the fourth prince, because he's the one as well. Like, he's always felt responsible for what happened. It's so good. Obviously, there's like a romance kind of bubbling as well with this series. It's great. I love this series. It's just beautiful, really well handled, perfect pacing. Every volume is fantastic. I always just want to keep reading it. I never want to put it down. So worth checking out if you haven't, even if you haven't read Dawn of the Arcana, or of course Ray Thomas' other work. I think this one is great standalone. It's quite complementary to Dawn of the Arcana, and if you enjoy this and you're wanting to go back to Dawn of the Arcana, that's maybe a good idea as well. Although, again, keeping in mind it's an earlier work, so the artwork is a lot rougher or less developed. I'm really happy that we're getting this series in English. It is fantastic. Beat Title, another series that I adore, and this is currently ongoing. I don't know if it'll ever see an ending. I kind of hope it doesn't, because I love it so much. But this is volume 26 of Natsume's Book of Friends by Yuki Midorikawa. This is the story of Takashi Natsume, a teenage boy who can see yokai, the Japanese spirits, and has always been able to. He was orphaned at a very young age and kind of ping-ponged between relatives and family friends for a long time. But was never really able to find his place or find people who understand him because of being able to see yokai. But ultimately, he's now found a home with his new foster family, the Fujiwaras, who are kind of like very distant relatives on one side of his family, and they live way out in like a country town. It's not like super duper rural, but it's pretty quiet. And it also coincidentally happened to be where Natsume's grandmother grew up. And she had kind of a terrible reputation in the town because, as he discovers, she was also able to see yokai. And so within the very few things that he has left from his grandmother that were, left to him, he finds this mysterious book of friends, which is full of names, and he discovers that they are in fact names of different yokai in the area that Reiko, his grandmother, collected over the course of her life, or her teenage years at least. So the series is this journey of Takashi's returning names, of trying to find connections both with yokai, who for as long as he's remembered, he's always been afraid of, has always been something that made him different, and so he's really shunned, as well as friends and people, school community that he's never really had before, like guardian figures who are willing to let him grow and listen to him and want the best for him. It's so good. This series makes me cry constantly. I adore the anime, right? Like, it's a phenomenal series. The manga's also fantastic. It's quite episodic, but it does have some larger story arcs, quite a few recurring characters, obviously. It's just fantastic. And then, so early on, first chapter, we also meet Nyanko Sensei, who is a yokai that Natsume kind of unwittingly frees, and he is wanting this book of friends because whoever possesses it, or whoever has control of these yokai names, have control over them. So he's wanting this book of friends, but he comes to an agreement that he will be Natsume's bodyguard for as long as it takes, for his life or whatever else. And once he dies, or once things kind of finish up, he will be left with the Book of Friends, right? It's so good. It's so good. Yeah, I mean, the series is fantastic. This one does have kind of some of the longer plot stories, some more stuff going on, but that doesn't mean that they're any less poignant, any less of a gut punch. It's just, I adore this series so much. I highly recommend this series. It's one that is probably not, I'm not going to say people don't know it, because it's certainly a cult favorite for a lot of people. The anime is quite beloved. The first 4 seasons and the movie got a disc release from various publishers. The 5th and 6th season additionally as well as the first 4 are streaming on various platforms. So people know it, and obviously 26 volumes out in English, it must be selling to some extent, but it's not one that I hear a lot of people talk about just generally. It's not one that I see a lot of people have on their shelves, and I think that's a shame, because it is really, really beautiful. It's one that I think anyone can enjoy, like really anyone, and it just captures this human experience so well. The poignant loneliness of not being accepted, of trying to find your place, of just wanting connection with other people, whether that be human or otherwise. It's just so good. I love it. And do we see how much Natsume grows over the course of the series? He goes from this very kind of withdrawn, quiet kid who doesn't want to really make an impact or cause trouble because of how often he's been rejected over the course of his life, to this kid who's much more outgoing, willing to stand up for himself, very protective of the people around him, because he's just so he's so sweet. He finds value in some things that people really take for granted. And I think it's so lovely to see a character who has, up until this point, had a really terrible life for the most part, but has stayed kind, stayed hopeful, stayed conscientious and caring and understanding throughout it, rather than being embittered. It's just, this is one that I'm like, okay, everyone and their grandma should watch this, because it's just so heartwarming. You may sob, you may cry bitter, bitter tears, but your heart will be warm. And you'll be heartbroken, but heart-warmed at the same time. It's a win-win situation. Yeah. Check out Natsume's Book of Friends if you haven't. If not through the manga, then definitely the anime. It is one of my favorite series of all time, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. Next, we have a new volume from a very popular Shonen Jump title, one of my favorite Shonen Jump titles. Getting quite far into it. It's one of the last ones. This only ran for a dozen or so volumes. But this is Chainsaw Man Volume 9 by Tatsuki Fujimoto. Oh my god, I love Chainsaw Man so much. I mean, I don't think that's a controversial statement. A lot of people enjoy the series for a lot of reasons, and it's just enormously fantastic. I cannot recommend this series enough, but like always, and especially with Fujimoto's work, warnings for all of the violence, all of the gross out humor, all of the gore, all of the everything, all of the really heavy existential themes of this series, because man oh man, this is a phenomenal series, but it's not an easy read necessarily. I look forward to the series returning mid this year, and I look forward to picking up Look Back, which is Fujimoto's most recent work as single volume. I already own all of Fire Punch, which is even harder to recommend. I say this every single time. If you want to, I would say if you're new to Fujimoto, or you're not like super into stuff that's hyper violent, hyper everything, needs 4 million content warnings, I would say try Look Back. That's probably the easiest read of his, and if you enjoyed that and you're willing to dive into a longer series, Chainsaw Man is your best bet. Fire Punch is a lot. It's a lot. But yeah, Chainsaw Man, I don't think I really need to introduce the series. Most people are aware of it. But this is a story about a teenage boy called Denji who, after being like very violently dismembered by a bunch of zombies, he forms a pact with his best friend, only companion, and loyal dog, Pochita, who is also a demon, coincidentally, he's like a little pudgy dog with a chainsaw sticking out of his head. And in doing so, in forming this pact, Denji becomes the titular Chainsaw Man. And so he's able to fight all of these devils, all of these horrible monsters that cause havoc within human society. And so Denji joins the public safety bureau group, whatever it is, along with, and so he is under the mentorship of a couple people, most notably Aki, who is sort of his direct superior, and then Makima, who's sort of in charge of everything, or this whole branch in this area. And then we also have Power, who's kind of one of our other major characters, who is a blood devil. And it's just, oh my god. So yes, as I said, hyper violent. So much gore, so much like exploding spines and just crazy shit. There's all these weird, wonderful devils. Just everything. If your imagination can come up with just some crazy wildness, then Chainsaw Man probably has it. And then one-ups it, right? I liken it a lot to Dorohedoro, because it's a similar kind of hyper-violent, just like grotesque, super violence, super gore series, but it has a real strong character story and human heart, and it's the same across Fujimoto's works. But if you're a fan of Dorohedoro, then you would like Chainsaw Man, I think. And if you like Chainsaw Man, absolutely check out Dorohedoro. Very different settings, but very similar vibes. And of course, like Fujimoto's other works, of course. Little bit of a cleaner or more or less bizarre alternative, as well as like Hell's Paradise Jigoku Raku, which is also fantastic, also one of my favorites. So there's a lot of options, and then stuff like Dan Dan and other things that are currently running in Jump as well. It's a good time to be a fan of crazy shit. And thank goodness I am. But yeah, again, this doesn't really need a huge amount of explanation. Most people are aware of Chainsaw Man. They've tried it and they either love it or hate it. That seems to be how Fujimoto's works tend to go. And I look forward to the anime as well this year. Next, the last for the standard trim general manga, I have some large trim stuff as well. We have the most recent volume of Toilet Bound Hanako-kun, Volume 12 by Aida Ira. Oh my god, crying in the club. As always, I just... Hanako-kun is so good, and if you're not reading the series, you're honestly missing out. It's fantastic. I love this series so much. It's so vibrant. All of the characters are so well written and complimentary, and every time I get like emotionally wrecked by this series, it's funny, it's quirky, it's good natured, but also like it's kind of horrifying and heartbreaking and all that other good shit too. Oh, I love this series so much. This is a series that I'm actually up to date with on the digital releases, because I literally cannot wait for when the print releases come out. This started at about volume 8, 9, where I caught up to the print releases. I was like, oh my god, no, I need to know what happens next, because oh my god. And then so I did, because this has a early digital release through Yen Press. So there was up to volume like 14 or 15 in the digital release. So I read all of that. I just last week read volume 16. Oh my god, it's so good. It's so good. I love it. But yeah, I'm an emotional wreck, and I highly recommend it to everyone. Check out the anime. It's very good. It's not like a one-to-one adaptation, but it has a pretty solid story arc. It shuffles one of the arcs to be ahead of another one, which doesn't have a huge impact necessarily. But man, oh man, don't be put off. I've said this before, don't be put off by the title. It's just in reference to the urban legend of Hanako-san in Japan, the ghost of a little girl who lives in a toilet stall, who grants wishes, and that is who our main character, Nene, she's trying to get a wish granted, and rather than the ghost of a little girl, a ghost of a teenage boy pops up and is like, oh hey, hi, sure, I can help you with that wish. She wanted help with romance, with a potential boyfriend. And rather than just granting her a wish, Hanako's like, well, okay, we can try to like appeal to this boy with your talents. And yeah, there's some shenanigans. Ultimately, Nene ends up as Hanako's human partner, as he is the one in charge of looking after all of the 7 mysteries of the school that the school has, right? It's so good! There's an antagonist character and like a group of kids who are kind of a bit shady. We're not quite sure what their full motivations are. And I just... oh, my heart. Anyway, read and or watch this series. You won't regret it. Next is larger manga. And I have quite a bit here as well. So first and foremost is a series that I previously owned this, and I actually unhauled it, but I was still following it digitally. It's one that I still really enjoyed, and I kind of was looking and reassessing stuff that I had and stuff that I wanted, and this one kept like popping up because it's really good. It's darn good. It's really good at what it does, and I like it. The atmosphere is fantastic. The art is gorgeous. I like it. And so it was one that I was like considering maybe adding back to the collection, because, you know, this is always a process of elimination. Sometimes you do regret getting rid of something. And luckily for me, I found a local seller who had a bunch of the volumes. So I got them at a really good price, a discount. And it's one that I was following digitally. So then I bought not the most recent, but the recent one that I hadn't read. I've got one to still get which is between, is a kind of a middling one. And there's a new volume just released, so I will get that in due course. But this is Kosuke Satake's The Witch and the Beast. This is the story of a girl called Gido, who has been cursed by a witch, and along with her partner Ashaf, who is this guy here, who is a mage, they're trying to hunt down the witch that cursed Gido, basically. And, maybe she's not all what she seems. This is a fantastic, dark fantasy series. What is quite the setting? It's definitely like a Western idea of like magic fantasy type of stuff. It's really, really good. It's also sultry as hell, right? And got fantastic action. So inside art looks, it's just really beautiful. I love the way that eyes are drawn in this series. It's just really, like, again, sultry. There's a certain appealing nature to how these characters just look at each other. And there sure is some emotions going on here. It's fantastic. The action is great. I really enjoyed this series. I was enjoying it when I unhauled it. I've been enjoying it since, and I'm actually quite pleased that I'm able to reintroduce the series back into the collection, because again, it's one that I was kind of back and forth on. So we have Volume 1, Volume 2, Volume 3, Volume 4, Volume 5, which is the last one that I got from like the local seller. And then I've read Volume 6 digitally, as I said. I still need to get that volume. And then Volume 7 is the most recent one that's been released in print here, although Volume 8 is due to be released soon. Oh my gosh, this part of the series, we got vampires. If you're into sexy vampires who absolutely are kinky as hell, you need to be reading this series. Maybe just even this arc, because damn, it is fantastic. So yeah, The Witch and the Beast is great. I really enjoy it. I really like the main characters, Gido and Ashaf. I think they're interesting. Like, they're an interesting duo, interesting partnership. Their motivations are really curious. I'd like to see more of that expanded on in the coming volumes as well. There's a lot to like with this series, and it's one that I do see a lot of people picking up, so it's not like it's it's not like people don't know about it, but I do think that if you're a fan of action, dark fantasy, dark like low fantasy, more like magic systems and stuff, and just some very attractive characters doing attractive things, then this is the series for you. So yeah, check it out. I have some ongoing manga, the first being the most recent volume, I think the most recent volume of what's this called? Drifting Dragons, Volume 10 by Taku Kuwabara. This is a like fantasy slice of life cooking manga about the crew of a, what is it called? Like a dragoneering ship called the Queen Zaza, who are kind of like, I don't want to say mercenaries for hire, but they travel around sustainably hunting dragons to prevent destruction of towns, basically. I've talked a little bit about like how this isn't a series for everyone. Like it you could quite easily connect like a larger allegory of whaling or similar kind of human hunting over the years to the series, which is valid, and I think that's a good reason as to not wanting to read the series. But I will say that all of the hunting is given the same kind of levity as in something like Golden Kamui. It's not just, oh, look how cool it is to kill animals. So, you know, it's maybe that makes it better for some people. I don't know. Obviously, it's a personal thing, and you have to assess for yourself. I do really like this series. It's a very sweet, slow, low stakes slice of life. I see it in sort of a similar vein as Magus of the Library or Witch Hat Atelier. I think they all give off like similar vibes. If you're a foodie, or Delicious in Dungeon as well, it's good. Like, it's a solid series. I really enjoy it. It's beautiful as well. I think the characters are really interesting. You got a pretty diverse cast of personalities and backgrounds, and it's always nice to see what's going on with these people and seeing how they work as a team and such. It's a good series, despite its potential flaws or potential issues that people might have with it. This is one I've been following the series for a long time. I read it when it was digital only, way back many years ago. It's one that did obviously get a print transitional release, or transition to a print release from Kodansha. It does have an anime. I've never seen it, cannot speak to how good it is, but that's on Netflix, and I think Sentai is putting it out on disc as well. So, you know, maybe people more informed than I can say whether it's good or not. I don't know. If nothing else, the manga is very good. If you're not put off by potential real-world similarities. It's, beautiful. I do encourage you to try it if it sounds like your thing. Next, we have the most recent volume of Perfect World by Rie Aruga, Volume 10. This is a 12-volume series completed in Japan. Josei might be technically shoujo, but I'm pretty sure it's josei. Which is a romance between a young woman and her high school crush, who she reunites with at her 10-year anniversary, who in the interim has suffered a spinal injury and is now in a wheelchair. So majority of the series is their relationship and, you know, the various things that come up in their lives because of disability, and, you know, the things that might be issues for like an able-bodied person dating someone who is disabled, or societal expectations, or just how a lot of the quote-unquote normal world is actively hostile towards those with disabilities, especially physical disabilities. It's really interesting. I think it's a solid romance series. It's quite sweet. They're a great couple. But so this is one that, again, I was following digitally, and I read up to volume 9, which I thought was the end for a long time. It's not. So this is the first volume that I hadn't read before. So I'm going to spoil this volume, and potentially I'm going to spoil the series thus far. So the 9th volume, the reason that I thought it was the end at the time was because it ended with them getting married, right? That's normally when a romance series ends, and it was beautiful. You had the lovely wedding and all sorts of things. This volume is obviously after the wedding. They're a married couple, and they're adjusting to living their life together as a married couple, and how they're influencing and impacting each other's lives, but then also them making the decision about wanting to be parents, and then obviously how, again, that like disability might impact that. So for Itsuki, our male main lead, because of his spinal injury, it's very likely that he can't have children in like the normal way. They would have to go through IVF treatments, because just how spinal injuries impact the human body. There's a lot that changes, and when he got his injury, he also didn't do any, he didn't consider any kind of future where he'd want kids, so he doesn't like have sperm frozen or anything. So there's this ticking clock that if they want kids, then they'll have to be very proactive about it. It's a very costly procedure, and then obviously it might not actually happen because they have a limited sample that they can use as well. So that's a lot of what this volume is their kind of ongoing attempts at a pregnancy, at having kids, and ultimately it's something that doesn't happen for them. Like they go through multiple rounds of IVF and they kind of lose their chance. They only had 4 attempts, and they never got to like a full pregnancy. The zygote or whatever it is didn't attach properly, so they can't have a biological child. And so obviously that's an aspect that can be really played for drama. There's a lot of, it's a very emotional thing regardless. IVF and the idea of having children or working to have children when you can't naturally is such a emotionally charged process that it is interesting to read or to experience through these characters. And obviously there's an additional facet with this particular couple because of how it's because of this disability, right? But then also the process of it being very, like, it's a hugely emotionally impactful and physically impactful process for the woman or the childbearing partner of couples. And so also how isolating that can feel, how hard it can be when you as a partner also don't know how to really handle that or respond to that. It's very, very good. The reason, so I thought it was, I don't want to say nice, but I thought it was a brave maybe choice that Aruga didn't go for the easy decision of like, oh yes, they were successful and now they're having like a biological child, and there's a lot of up and downs, and it was a hard process, but like ultimately things worked out. Like, I don't want to say love wins, but that kind of sentiment, because that would have been the easy option, and sometimes that's how things work out, sometimes it's not. So although they are not able to have a biological child, the ending of this volume kind of opens up the potential of them adopting, right? Which for them, or for our main character, or main female character, she kind of didn't really think about that. And I appreciate that this series is going to approach adoption, and adoption is like a valid option for couples who try to have children or aren't able to have children, or just don't want to bring another life into the world when there are so many children out there who need homes and need support and love and families. So alright, so how do I phrase this? Like, I've always seen adoption as like a very valid option for people, even outside of like, even if you can have your own children, I think adopting a child is also a great opportunity. I see, like, I have family who is adopted, not like directly, but extended family who have either been adopted or have adopted children themselves. So adoption's always been like, I've always thought of it as an option, but I guess a lot of people don't, or maybe it's just something that I don't come across a lot, because it's quite rare to see it at all in anime and manga. It does come up sometimes, but then it's kind of this big point of drama or contention or whatever else. But even in like Western media, it's not always super obvious, and especially when we have narratives about starting a family and struggling with pregnancies and all sorts of things. I'm like, you can always adopt. Like, there's children that need homes, right? And I feel like you can adopt a child and still love them as much, maybe even more so than like a biological child, right? Especially if you're so desperate for a family and for a kid. You know, what does it matter about, blood relation ultimately? And that's a point that's brought up in this particular volume about, they have this discussion about adoption and whether or not it's an option for them, whether or not they think that they'd be able to love a kid the same way that they would if it was their own, that they gave birth to, right? And Isukime makes a really beautiful, or tells a really beautiful story about about his relationship with his stepfather. His father died quite early in his life, when Isuki was very young, and so when his mother got remarried, he was kind of a little bit upset. He didn't really want to get along with his stepfather, and he didn't really know if they had much in common, and it was a little bit of a point of contention for a long time. But then ultimately, over the years and over the time, they became a family. And I think that's just like a really beautiful sentiment, especially when we live in like this modern era of families who are, they're, whether it's, step parents or step siblings, half siblings, whether it's, queer parents or single parents. Like, they're obviously the stereotypical like heterosexual 2-parent household with 2.5 kids is not the standard anymore. I mean, I'm sure it is in some communities and in some social class systems, but typically, the modern family doesn't look like that. And I think it's really nice that a story like this, especially when we already have a couple that is a little bit outside of the norm, acknowledging that, and acknowledging that it's still valid. Like, you're still a family. No matter if you love and care about each other, you're still a family. And it's really good. I've said this before in this series. I think it's very heartfelt. I think it's very thoughtful about how it represents the disability aspect of this manga. I'm not going to say it's like a perfect representation. I'm not physically disabled. I can't speak to that. But I do think that it doesn't hide away from the hard realities that just society imposes sometimes on people who live with a spinal injury or need a mobility device or whatever the case may be. It has a pretty diverse range of voices, disabled voices and viewpoints. It's just something that I think Araga's put a lot of time into trying to be thoughtful and representing this, and it's never been a gimmick. Plus, they're a cute couple. I think I'm really happy that it's worked out. obviously, like, normally romance manga, things do work out, but it's nice to see the journey of, like, how that happens. And I look forward to the last 2 volumes, because I have seen the last volume, and I know they have a kid that now I presume they adopt. But it's all the journey. It's the journey to get there, and I look forward to finishing this up in the next 2 volumes. Next, we have another manga that made me emotional. I freaking cried like 4 times in this volume. Holy moly. I guess just I'm a big wuss, but oh my god. So this is A Man and His Cat by Umi Sakurai, volume 5. Alright, so in this volume, our sweet darling baby Fukumaru goes missing and is trying to find his way home. And his dad, our main character, well, our main human character, he's trying to find his little baby cat. Oh my god. Oh, I'm already like welling up. This is such a good volume. Holy moly. I was so not prepared for how emotionally fragile this series made me already. Like, when I read the first volume, I was like, oh god, this is gonna hit me in the heart. This volume is the worst of all. And by that, I mean the best of all. Oh my god. If you've ever had a pet, it doesn't matter what kind of pet, it doesn't matter for how long, it doesn't matter. And if you've loved an animal, this series is going to just catch your heart and then squeeze it and just make you feel the deepest emotion as a pet owner you'll ever feel. I adore this manga. Everyone I know who has read this or is reading this adores this manga. If you're not reading this series, you are, again, I don't want to reiterate it, but you are actually missing out on one of the most fantastic, heartfelt, genuine series I've come across. Square Enix puts this out. It's a little bit pricier. They are super skinny volumes, but oh my god, they're worth it. They are so worth it. Yeah, I mean, what else is there to say? It's just so good. It's so good. And I cried, which again is not that unusual because I'm a big sook anyway, but like, and especially, so I don't know if I've mentioned this on the channel or on a YouTube video in any real capacity, but last year we had to put my dog down, right? And she was old, like she was definitely towards the end of her life, but it's heartbreaking, right? It's a member of your family, and that feeling, that heartbreak of not knowing or not being able to fully look after a member of your family, because that really is what pets are, right? Oh god, I can't handle it. It's so good. It's so good. This is such a good volume, and read this manga. Read the manga. It's so good and sweet and soft and lovely and heartwarming and good. It's just goddamn good. Next, we have the 3rd volume of which I think might be the penultimate volume. I don't actually know. The 3rd volume of number 5 by Taiyo Matsumoto. This is the most recent of Matsumoto's works to come to English. Certainly not his most recent work. And if you ask me what this series is about, I couldn't tell you. I have no idea. I'm a big Matsumoto fan. His series aren't always the most easy to parse, but this one's the most, like, obtuse, maybe. It's interesting. I certainly enjoy it. It's been a quirky story to follow. Lots going on. Plenty to unpack. But as to specifics, then I don't know. Yeah, I like it. I'm looking forward to continuing it, completing it. I'm always happy when we're getting new Matsumoto in English. It's one that actually was, I think, Viz attempted to release previously and just didn't sell, so they cancelled it after the second volume. But now we're in a much better manga market, so a lot of those issues aren't issues anymore, and having the opportunity to collect this series now is just kind of amazing. It's a real reflection on how much has changed within the manga industry just over the last couple years, last decade probably. It's great, and it's not going to be for everyone, but if you're a Matsumoto fan, you're probably already buying it, but check it out if you're not. Last for ongoing large trim, and this is kind of a fancy edition, continuation and volume 15 of the Fullmetal edition of Fullmetal Alchemist, with Hohenheim on the front here, von Hohenheim. This is getting towards the end. There's only 18 of these kanzenban in Japan, so we're heading into the home stretch. This is one of my favorite shonen manga, to nobody's surprise. I only waxed poetic about it earlier on in this video. This is a fantastic, coming of age story, action manga about two brothers in their search to restore themselves after a stupid attempt at human transmutation via alchemy in their youth after the untimely death of their mother. And then there's much larger stakes as we go through, but ultimately it's a story of family and family connections and working to make the world a better place, which I think is something that really shines in Fullmetal Alchemist. I mean, even outside of, again, these like larger fights against big evil villains, and all of the crazy alchemy that goes on, this is a story about people working to do better, to be better, to make the world a better place to live in, and also to like atone for mistakes and decisions they've made in the past. And one of the most valuable things is how the series presents second chances, not just for our main characters, and most notably Edward, our main character, but for a vast, almost the entirety of the cast, right? Whether it be Hohenheim, whether it be Mustang and Riza, whether it be the villains of the piece, the homunculi and their choices. It's so good. It's so good. Legitimately, I mean, there's a reason this is sort of a modern classic. I say that, the series ended in 2009, 2010, has had two extremely popular anime adaptations, as well as various, other properties, video games, light novels, etc. I'm a big fan of it all, right? I'm not video games because I don't play video games ever, but like everything else, I'm deep into the lore, right? But quintessentially, I've said this before, I love Hiromu Arakawa's works. I think both this and Silver Spoon are truly like works of great fiction, and works that hold up after years and years and scrutiny and criticism and exploration, and they continue to come back to be just genuinely fantastic stories with fantastic characters and really believable and relatable stakes and challenges and characters. This series has like this, it has alchemy, it has this quirky, overpowered, magical element to it, but it's never really been about being good at alchemy. And that's something that really, I think, sets itself apart from a lot of, especially shonen action, of where usually our characters, our protagonists, are trying to be, the most powerful of this and the best of that. They're trying to be at the top of what their goal is, right? Whether that's King of the Pirates or Hokage or whatever, right? They're trying to be the most powerful, the most whatever, and then they will use that those powers which they gained over the course of the series to save the world, and the world is at peace. And although there's an element of that, they use their powers to save the world and the world's at peace, but it was never, Edward and Alphonse never wanted to be the greatest alchemists of all time. They never strove to be stronger and better and more powerful than other people. They were working towards becoming themselves again. They were working towards fixing a mistake they made as young, grief-stricken children who were just absolutely desperate to hold on to the one family member that they knew aside from each other. Oh, I adore this series. I already talk way too much about it all of the time. I make no secret that I just love Fullmetal Alchemist with my whole heart. If you haven't read the manga, do. I know that people, and as do I, love the anime adaptations, most notably Brotherhood, but I'm a fan of both, and both are good. They're both complementary. They both tell similar but different stories, and I think that's really valuable. But if you haven't read the manga, do. Even if you've watched Brotherhood, read the manga. It's just really powerful, really beautifully done, and again, like with anything, there's issues, but the issues are so overwhelmingly outweighed by the positives of the story. And I think there's a reason why so many people have attached themselves to this series over the many, many years that it's been popular. Okay, now we have some finales, some final volumes of ongoing manga. The first one, both of these are just so good, and I'm happy and sad that they're over, right? Just like, conflicted. I love them both, but I'm glad I saw how they ended. So the first one is volume 4 of Boys Run the Riot by Keito Gaku. This is the story of a trans teenage boy who is closeted at home, doesn't really know how to come out to people, and being transgender is quite typically unable to dress in the way that they want to or the way that he wants to, because of how people perceive that. He's really into street fashion, he's really loves graffiti, and he uses graffiti as an outlet for his inner turmoil. And in the first volume, he coincidentally meets a classmate at a pop-up store, fashion store that he's visiting, and this classmate asks him and kind of ropes him into starting a fashion label with him. And so they do, and over the course of the series they meet various people, both within the queer community and outside of it, other students who are just like interested in this idea of a student-run business or expressing themselves outside of what society might think is safe. This is a really, really good manga about becoming comfortable with yourself, self-expression, the transgender experience. For those who don't know, Keitogaku is himself a trans man, so I would presume there's perhaps some personal anecdote or personal experience that has gone into this work. It also has a really nuanced look at the queer community as a whole, and also especially transgender people's relationships with other people, and how, you know, their self-protection, their fear of being rejected does mean that sometimes that results in them cutting off people who would otherwise be very supportive, or doesn't have, you know, who wants to support them, who wants to accept them as they are, and that kind of insular self-isolation that anyone can find themselves in, but even more so when you when you identify as a gender that people don't really understand, or people don't quite know how to react to. Plus, this is just like a really good manga about like the small boutique fashion industry and the challenges of you know, starting any kind of business, right? But especially fashion. And then again, how clothing reflects or is a key part of our self-expression. It's just really good. It's really good. Yeah, it's fantastic. This particular volume is the ending, obviously, so we have all three of our boys kind of debuting their fashion line at a small pop-up store, and kind of how that works, them looking for direction and identity for their brand, like what they want their clothing to represent versus just like mimicking or copying things that they think are cool or interesting. What is the message that they want their clothing to be giving, right? And I think it's really beautifully done in this manga. Also, we have our main character kind of coming out to his family, and the reaction there, and the, you know, the obvious turmoil that can occur from that, but also like the support that might come from somewhere that is somewhat unexpected. It's really, really well done. And the last like solid chunk of this manga is what is sort of explained as like the pilot, like the original just one shot that would later inspire this larger series, which is decent. Like, it's a solidly interesting, perhaps even more raw look at, you know, the transgender experience and being comfortable with yourself and rejecting people who reject you. It's really, really good. But yeah, Boys Run the Riot is fantastic. It's also really wonderful that Kodansha put together an entirely trans team for this manga. So everything from translation to lettering to editorial, all of it is done by a myriad of trans folk, which obviously lends itself to a nuance that wouldn't inherently necessarily be there if a cisgender team was working on it, regardless of an author being trans, right? So it's really wonderful to see how thoughtful and how much effort and care has been put towards the series, and I really hope we see more from Keitogaku, because their works are, or their work, their singular that I've read, is fantastic, and I look forward to seeing more from him. I want him to like whatever topic would be really cool. I'd be interested to see kind of even just a wider look at like fashion, because I think that he really captures a lot of the really interesting parts of the industry that people forget about or aren't aware of. I don't know. Yeah, read this manga. It's only 4 volumes. It's great, and you don't want to miss it. Other manga that came to a conclusion this month. Again, like, I freaking cried. I'm so emotionally invested and so happy with this series. I adore it. Like, I just love it to bits. It's so good, and everyone should read it. It's fantastic. And that is another Kodansha series, Sweat and Soap, Volume 11 by Kintetsu Yamada. This is a manga about a couple, a young woman who is kind of hyper aware of how she smells, her sweatiness. Because of that, she uses a lot of soap and scented products, and she works at the company that makes her favorite soap. One day she meets one of the product developers who, you know, has actually made a lot of the soaps that she really enjoys, and they hit it off. You know, it's their romantic story, and their ups and downs in their relationship, moving in, dating, all these things, and then ultimately, as this cover might show, marriage, and kind of a little bit after that as well. You know, starting to grow their family. I love this series to bits. This is a fantastic romance series. Great relationship. Just super wonderful people. Like, you're so happy that they're happy together. Yeah, I just really love this series. It's so good. I freaking cried in the wedding. I also am like 100% set on having Asuko's wedding dress as my future wedding dress. That's the one I want. Like, it's beautiful, and also it really suits her well, and I'm like, I want that for me. I'm single, and I'm like, will be my wedding. But yeah, it's really, the wedding is gorgeous, and the family and friends and everything is just fantastic. And then we also have like the last couple chapters, the bonus chapters, are focused on their married life, and most importantly, their kind of pregnancy and having a child, which they do very quickly because it's something that they're wanting to do. They're very excited for, which is valid for a lot of people. I personally, not for me, but if you're happy and content and satisfied and ready for it, like, that's totally cool. And I think for these two, they are so well suited. You know, it's a perfect, first of all, it's fictional, but also, like, they're a perfect couple, and they're on the same page, and the way that they communicate their wants and hopes and dreams for the future is just really lovely. Relationship goals, guys. Relationship goals. Yeah, I love this series, and if you haven't started reading it, give it a shot. If you haven't started reading it or buying it and you're wanting to, maybe hold off on buying the volumes quite yet, because Kodansha is releasing a box set, and I kind of just want to re-buy it. Wouldn't be the first time. I did that with Princess Jellyfish. I kind of want to do it for Sweat and Soap. Yeah, this is fantastic. Again, if you're not reading this, you've probably missed out on one of the best romance series of the last, 5 years. It's so good. It just ticks all the boxes, and I adore it. I adore it. Really, that's all I have to say. Read Sweat and Soap. On to, I guess what I'd call the queer manga, right? Some of it's BL, some of it's Yuri, some of it's just like more general LGBT manga. There's quite a bit here as well, so yeah. First up is a couple volumes, volume 2 and 3 of Love Me for Who I Am by Kato Konoyama, which is about a non-binary protagonist who is just trying to find their place, and there's a tentative relationship going on, and their relationship to a bunch of other people who work at kind of a maid cafe for boys dressed up as girls. And then, so a bunch of the kids who work there are within the LGBT spectrum, and, you know, just their various interactions and relationships and all sorts of things together. It's very good. It's quite sweet and heartfelt. It's, from my understanding, one that a lot of non-binary people really like attach themselves to. They see a lot of like really solid parts of themselves in how these kids are represented, especially our main character, and also this like ongoing process of figuring yourself out. Once again, like, I know I've talked about this before, even in this haul, right? But building a community, and especially finding that community and comfort with yourself, and relationships with other people when you're younger, is really valuable and really important. So yeah, I like this series a lot. I haven't quite caught up with it yet. The 5th volume is the final one, and I think that one's just been released, so I have 2 more volumes to get, and then I will read it all and finish it. That's it. It's one that was not a surprise license, but it was one that a lot of people were very happy about, and I'm glad that we're getting a lot of more diverse LGBT manga, good and bad, right? Like, I think that's the aim, is to have so much that you do have a range of quality, and various genre and story and settings and whatever else. So Love Me for Who I Am, really, really decent, and definitely worth a read if you're interested in these sorts of topics. Next we have my trash. My problematic fave. This is The World's Greatest First Love, The Case of Ritsuo Nodera, Volume 15 by Shungiku Nakamura. This series just keeps going, and I keep reading it. I'll see. It's always difficult to, like, flick through these books because it can get pretty spicy pretty quickly. A lot of this book is focused on my favorite characters, Kisa and Yukine. It's kind of the secondary couple, these two. Very good. Very good. Like, again, this, I say it every time, this isn't like high art. It's very problematic in a lot of ways. I wouldn't even say it's very good BL, but man, is it my kind of trash. I mean, I say this every time, and I don't want to sound like a broken record. I'm not really a Nakamura fan. I don't like Junjo Romantica, or I don't like 90% of Junjo Romantica. I really don't like Hybrid Child. That actively, like, really, I dislike a lot. But she's emblematic of this, like, late 90s, early 2000s BL, the stuff that people make fun of and, like, criticize as, you know, the worst of yaoi. And yes, there's a lot of that. She's not the only perpetrator, but she has been the face of it, especially with Junjo Romantica being so popular. getting anime and everything. This is, as a more recent work, is probably, it has less of the bad stuff. It doesn't have none of the bad stuff, but it's enough that there's enough things that I do like that I'm happy to just be like, yeah, you know, it's just the kind of series it is, right? And I'm nostalgic for this one as well, so there's some good in this series. It's exactly what it says on the box, right? Like, there's no surprises with this. It's exactly what you sign up for. And if that's what you want, then check it out, right? Like, there's plenty to enjoy with this one. It's very straightforward, not complicated. And, you know, maybe look for more accurate, more responsible representation in other series. Not this one. Not this one. But I do appreciate that the relationship is moving forward. It's taken this long, but it is slowly and steadily getting there. So I always look forward to the next volume. I am always keen for the next volume, so that just tells you maybe what kind of person I am. Anyway, Most Girls First Love, Case of Ritsuko no Dara, not the worst thing in the world. Definitely worth reading for certain people. And if you're that kind of person, then read it. We have the first volume of the sequel series, The Change World by Yu Minaduki. The original volume for this couple was Sayonara Game, which came out fairly recently. This is a 2-volume sequel to that, and drama abounds. We have our couple from Sayonara Game, and now they're a little bit more established. They've been dating each other for a little bit longer, and then we have the introduction of the rival character and all the uneasiness that brings. Still not sure if I'm sold on this series yet, or this world. I know that Love Nest, which is kind of like a spin-off series of this one, is very well regarded. So I just, I don't dislike this. I didn't hate it or anything. But it's not like, I'm not necessarily the biggest fan of this couple. Again, there's nothing really wrong with them, but I don't love them in the same way that I love some of the other couples that I follow, that I read their stories. So, I don't know whether that's a similar sentiment for the series in general or not, but, I'll continue it. I'll definitely read the second volume of Change World because I do want to know how it wraps up. And then, of course, it'll expand into Love Nest, and we'll see how I like that one, and whether or not I want to continue with this, universe maybe is the right word. I don't know. It's solid. It's good. It's pretty by the numbers. I don't really like which is pretty standard BL trope of I'm straight, but I'm gay for you. And I'm like, oh, alright. There's bisexuality exists. That's a thing. But, that kind of comes with some of the expectation for BL, unfortunately. But yeah, Change World, it's fine. It's a continuation of, it's pretty more of the same of what Sayonara Game was, with a touch more drama. So, maybe that's a plus for a lot of people. I don't know. Next, we have the second volume / again sequel, Seaside Stranger, Harukaze no Stranger, by Kikana. The first volume came out a while ago. This is technically a sequel series, but just continuation of that first volume. This is the story of a young couple. One guy, in the first volume, we have a an author or a writer who lives on this kind of quiet island in the south. Just him and his aunt and a couple other people, and he's really cut himself off of his family. He's gay, so he just doesn't feel like he can live up to their expectations, so he's been estranged from his family for a long time. And years before he helped this kid, or took notice of this kid who was quite in a bad place after the untimely death of his mother. And then now we skip to current day, and this kid's returned to the island. He's a little bit older. He's about 20, 21. And he finished up school, and he's figuring out what he wants to do with his life, but he's made the decision that he loves this author, and he wants to be with him, right? And so the first volume was about that, like, ongoing relationship, them sort of backwards and forwards before getting together. And then now this continuation is they are together, but there's more, obviously, to explore, more to be done. And more specifically in this series, we have our main character reconnecting with his family. So his parents, who he's been estranged from for a long time, after he was unable to really, like, get married. Like, he had a fiance, an arranged marriage and all of that prior, and so there's kind of like a weird relationship there. And at the end of the first volume, he heard news that his father was ill, and so he's returned to the city, to Tokyo, to kind of reconnect and also not want any regrets. He doesn't want to lose his father before he can reconnect, or at least clear the air, or at least confront this kind of elephant in the room that was his coming out and his gayness, right? And so he and his boyfriend are now going to meet the family, basically. It's really good. Like, I really enjoy the series. I actually read the first volume digitally, like, ages ago, when it was licensed just digitally. The first volume has a anime adaptation via film, which is great. Really, really, really good. We've seen a lot of really solid BL adaptations recently, and the Stranger by the Shore, or Seaside Stranger, is no different. I am really happy that we're getting this series. I really enjoy Kikano's work, and I look forward to seeing how these two and their relationship with each other and their relationship with the people around them, their family, continues to evolve. And it's just really, sweet. A lot to look forward to. Again, check it out. If you're wanting, I would say this is a solid BL, and I would recommend it to anyone who's interested in BL, or who's interested in solid romance stories. If you don't mind some explicit, elements, and you don't have an issue with, a gay relationship, then check it out. Next, we have one of my favorite ongoing manga. Again, this one is not necessarily easy to recommend because it's super explicit, quite violent. It's very dark, but very popular, and one of the kind of tentpole series for this publisher, and that is Twittering Birds Never Fly by Ko Yonoda. I'm a big Yonoda fan. I love this series so much. It's certainly not for the faint of heart, and oh my god, so, you know, I don't follow scans for any series nowadays. This was a series that I did originally read in scans prior to, like, being aware that manga you could buy, right? But this was a series that had, like, a really big break. June is not a good publisher. I don't think that's a controversial statement. And so there was a long hiatus between volume 3 and volume 4. Not a hiatus on the artist's end, but on the publisher's end, because they're just terrible at being a business. But yeah, this is the story of a Yakuza member called Yashiro, who is kind of infamous within his group at large that he's just a slut, right? Like, he just likes sleeping around with whomever, whatever, and he's just an extreme masochist, like, just wants to be treated like trash, and people do. He gets no respect, but within his own, like, smaller group that he runs, his men do, like, quite respect him because he's smart. Like, he is very good at what he does, in all aspects of his life. Anyway, one day a new member joins his group, who he's recently been released from prison and all sorts of things, but he's like, this other guy's just, like, in love with our main character, Yashiro, but he has erectile dysfunction. Like, this is relevant, right? Which means that Yashiro, like, really finds that intriguing, and it kind of is not a challenge necessarily, but he feels like that's safe for him. So he really starts to rely on this other guy a lot, and then their relationship starts to change, but there's still this underlying current of Yashiro rejecting the things, or the people and the things that care for him, just because he's just been so mistreated his whole life. Like, there's a whole bunch of stuff. Like, he didn't become this person organically, like, completely whole cloth. He's a product of a lot of different traumas. But yeah, so Twittering Birds Never Fly is quite well known. It's also had a recent anime film adaptation. Very good. Was super explicit. Not one to watch with the parents in the house. This particular volume isn't necessarily that explicit. There's a lot of violence in this one. Oh my god. I haven't really, like, read any of this, but oh my god, the drama. I was so high stakes. I can't wait for volume 7. I need to know what happens next, because, like, you're invested in this relationship, but then there's, like, all of these darker elements in this larger conspiracy and gang war, and the way that Yashiro, like, rejects again people and people who care about him. He doesn't. It's like a self-protective thing. It's so good. It's so good. And if you like spiciness, then you won't be disappointed either. Like, I don't like to recommend June titles that much, again, because they're quite unreliable, and I dislike their business practices, and, you know, all those other things. But I do think there's been a concerted effort by the staff, not the business owner, because that guy sucks, but I do think that the poor, tireless staff who work at DMP do try their hardest, and we've seen quite a few solid licenses from them the last year or so, which is like the monkey paw uncurling a finger. But as I say with Tokyo Pop, I'm not a hypocrite. If something I like or I'm interested in is licensed by a publisher that I have issues with or that is problematic, then I will buy it from them. Like, I will give them my money, but it's understandable. I totally, like, 100% get if people don't want to do that because they're shady. But yeah, Twittering Birds Never Fly, dark, not a sweet, like, uplifting romance, but super compelling, and also, like, you get super invested in what's going on. Yeah, so check it out if it sounds like your thing. Next, we have the most recent volume of I Cannot Reach You by Mika. This is, I think this is getting an anime? I don't remember. This is the story of two childhood friends. They're in high school. One who has a big fat crush on the other, and the other who's, like, realizing he has a big fat crush on his friend. It's sweet. It's pretty to the point. I'm a big sucker of childhood friends to lovers. This particular volume focuses on the school trip, and there's some, like, pretty solid little character moments here. It's good. It's a decent BL, and I like it a lot. Like, I don't know what to say aside from that. Like, it's just pretty typical for this genre, this premise. I like it. The artwork's very pretty. It's super, like, sweet. Not, there's nothing explicit in it as of now, and I doubt there will be. So if that's something you're aware of or wary of or whatever, then maybe this one's one to check out. Yeah, it's a story of young love, first love, whatever else. And yeah, a solid little addition to anyone's BL library. Next we have speaking of problematic publishers, next we have the second volume of our Not So Lonely Planet travel guide by Mone Sorai, released by Tokyo Pop. This is a ongoing romance, BL, about a gay couple who are traveling around the world. Each chapter or thereabouts is them in a different country and their development of their relationship. Oh my god, guys. Oh my god, I love this series so much. I just adore this series. Oh, no. It's so good. So in this volume, we have them visiting Italy, Finland, Germany, and France. Oh, this is probably my number one ongoing BL. Like, legitimately. I think this is probably my favorite BL that I'm actively following, and I'm following quite a few. Like, there's everything that I've talked about for the most part I really enjoy and love and want in my personal collection of BL, but this one hits everything for me. I not only is it just, like, the most lovely, sweet thing to follow this couple and the ups and downs of traveling with the person that you care about. I mean, they say if you can survive a trip or a vacation with your partner, especially international vacation, then you can survive anything. Like, it's a great way to test your personal relationship. And also, like, I'm just a big, outside of the plague, like, I love traveling, and so it's really nice to kind of vicariously go on this huge world trip with these two. Oh, and it's so, like, it's really wholesome. They meet all sorts of different people, and notably they meet all sorts of different people who are very accepting of their relationship, and so the comfort they have being with each other and being openly with each other is something really lovely to see as they continue on their journey together. Oh, I love this series so much. This is fantastic. Like, again, I feel like if you're not following the series, like, yeah, I know Tokyo Pop problematic, but you are missing out on one of the best ongoing romance series, full stop, like queer or straight, if you're not reading this. And I just love it so much. It's so important to me. This is just a fantastic series, and I highly encourage people to read it if you are interested. Also, again, this may matter to some people. There's nothing explicit in it, so it's not like you're going to be confronted with an very intimate sexual scene. It's not really focused on that. It's more so their day-to-day and traveling adventures and the kind of quiet moments when they're together outside of the more touristy things that they do. Like those quiet, small moments in hotel rooms where they reflect on each other and they spend time with each other, right? Like outside of the stress of the day or the excitement of the day. This is a good series. Read this series, everybody. Everybody go read this series. Do it. Next, we have another BL title. This and the next one, which is the last manga that I'll be talking about, are both BL. And this is another one that is like volume 2, but also technically like a sequel. It wasn't really published as volume 2 directly necessarily. But this is a Kodansha title. My Summer Review, which is volume 2 of the Summer Review series by Nagisa Furuya. This is a story, a sequel story to our couple who were kind of friends in high school, and one who they like knew each other and then reunited in high school, and one of them had feelings, and then anyway, ultimately they got together. This is them after graduating high school. They've been together for a while, and so it's their first like summer as a couple, really, and them trying to navigate their ongoing relationship and how that's affected their friendship and their relationship with other people. Maybe it's more than a year afterwards. Anyway, regardless, man, these kids are all right. They made good. I liked the first volume a lot. This second volume was also really great. It was nice to see their relationship expanded upon, and them coming to like make decisions about what they wanted from this relationship and how the building comfort levels as well. It was nice. It was nice to see this kind of transitional phase from like high school sweethearts to a couple that have been together a little bit longer, who are thinking a little bit more into the future. It was good. It was good. I liked it. And it's nice to see Kodansha kind of expanding their catalog of titles. We're seeing more and more BL from them, certain Yuri as well. So again, it's a kind of an indication of the diversification and the strength of the market right now. I think it's great. I'm really happy. I'm really happy that we're getting this sort of thing from all sorts of different publishers. Next, we have the last of the manga, but not nearly the last of the books to talk about. So many books. This is another one that, oh my god, I'm so excited to get this new volume because it's been a long time since the last one, and I've just been needing it because I adore this series. And that is, of course, Ten Dance Volume 6 by Inoue Sato. This is a story of two professional dancers, one who specializes in like standard ballroom, the other who is a Latin ballroom dancer. And they have very similar names. They're kind of rivals, although one is way more well regarded and recognized than the other. And they kind of end up, they and their partners, dance partners, end up working together to teach each other their dances, right? Because there's this event where you have to dance all 10 of the like standard ballroom dances, so like more classical ballroom and then Latin as well. You have to show off that you can do all of them. And so they are regarded as like the best in each specific group. And so they start training dancing together. And over then our male leads, our male dancers, they have this series, I've said it before, there's some chemistry here. They start dancing with each other and they grow closer, and there's some very obvious attraction, some really wonderful chemistry and tension between the leads, and then them trying to navigate that and, you know, coming to terms with something that they haven't really ever experienced before, whilst also still being rivals. This is a good volume. There's some stuff that happened in this volume that I'm like, oh, this is shady. I feel bad for both the characters because they're kind of like they're apart now, right? Like they put an end to their partnership and they're trying to move past what they haven't had as a relationship, but neither's doing a particularly good job at any of that. So it's interesting to see how they're both struggling separately whilst yearning for the other person. Some delicious yearning. Yeah, it's good. It's really good. And then we have both of them kind of working towards and succeeding in their own personal careers. It's just really great. I love the series. The dancing is perfectly drawn. You can really feel the moment, feel the atmosphere. This is a good series. It's a good series, and I encourage you to read it again if it sounds like something you're interested in, because it's very, very good. So we have some Yuri. Yay, exciting. And this is another series that I love. It's ongoing, and it's been a long time since the last volume, so it's nice to revisit these girls. Oh my god, I'm so happy they're back. This is technically the 7th book / the 2nd book of this series. This is Kasasan and Yamada Volume 2, which is the 7th Kasasan book, as is shown here, by Hiromi Takashima. And this is the story of two girls who met in high school, started dating in high school. Now they are in their post-graduation, ongoing university life together. And they're super sweet. I really enjoy this series. I just love Kasasan and Yamada as a couple. I think they're really well matched. They're very different personality-wise, but you can really see how much they care about each other and how important their relationship is, and, you know, how they support each other. It's so good. It's so good, and dang, I sure do love these girls. But now it means that I'm going to have to wait for the next one. And it took forever to get this one. That's maybe the problem with reading ongoing series, is that you have to be patient in between volumes. But yeah, if you're wanting a Yuri series and you haven't tried the Kasasan series, then definitely do that, first and foremost. Secondly, if you're wanting, this also has a pretty solid anime adaptation. It's like an OVA, 45 minutes or something, which is very good. I'm just a little bit pickier with my Yuri. I do enjoy a lot of Yuri titles, but there's not a huge amount that I own physically. I have a lot of digital stuff, but not too many that have made the transition to print within my personal library. And again, maybe that's just because I'm more choosy when it comes to Yuri, and also compared to like a lot of BL, the sheer number of BL that we get is vastly more than the Yuri, so that might be the differentiation. But this is great. And if you've never tried a Yuri title but you're wanting to, or you're interested in a solid romance, and again you don't care whether it's straight or queer, then I would encourage you to try Kasasan. It's a great introductory Yuri series as well. I think it will appeal to a lot of people, or does appeal to a lot of people, even those who don't necessarily regard themselves as a Yuri fan, or just haven't tried it yet, or tried Yuri as a genre generally. It's really good, and yeah, I'm always so happy to see these girls in love. They're great, super sweet, and super exciting to read more. Okay, this might be a bit of an oddity. This is a Kickstarter manga. It's an anthology. One that I backed and was super excited once I got it in the mail. It's like with all anthologies, there's some stories that are stronger than others, but overall this is a really decent volume. Yuri, and this is Boyish squared, which is, let me adjust, it's a very large print volume, not thickness wise, but it is obviously larger than your standard manga. And this is a Butch Yuri anthology, so wherein both of the female characters are butch, right? So typically in Yuri manga you have the one that's like a lot more femme coded, and then one that's a little bit more masculine coded, like the cool prince type, the butch one of the two, but not necessarily quintessentially what Westerners think of as like butch woman or lesbian. This, again, there's variation because this is an anthology, but I think this is more in line with what a lot of Westerners think of like butch lesbians. Again, presented differently. There's a lot of different sorts of stories in this one. It's a good time though. Like I appreciated it. I think it was really sweet. And these girls are living their best lives. But also, like, a lot of Yuri manga can also be like very femme stories. So both the girls are a lot more feminine, that long hair, pretty look, which again is fine and is not a bad thing, but there is a lack of butch women in Yuri manga and women loving women stories in manga. So it's not like, it's interesting and it's nice to see creators like actively create the content that they're interested in, or that they're wanting, or that they recognize has been ignored in the market. I can't quite remember, but there's a whole list of the authors there, and all of them, most of them, if not all of them, are queer women who are either butch themselves or interested in butch women, presumably maybe both. I don't know. I don't want to make a blanket assumptions, but I think it's really cool that we're seeing projects like this, and that they're becoming more available. I will, in the description or in the comments, put a link to this because you actually can buy it now. If you missed the Kickstarter, there's an opportunity to buy it in print. I think it's on Booth. I'd have to check. So if you're wanting your own copy, you can get it from there as well. Because, you know, it's nice to have the variation and the opportunity to have these sorts of stories being told. And again, it's a really solid little anthology. Some are better than others, but overall, really strong book. So we have some non-manga comics. The first is the complete 2 omnibus volumes and like art book as well, from Psycho Inc.'s Open Spaces and Closed Places, which was a webcomic that she did. I think it ran from 2008 to 2014, 2015. Oh, 2014, it says right there on the book. Smart G. And then it came with the art book. These are the covers of like the original printed volumes. 6 volumes altogether. And this is kind of an interesting little send-up of classic shoujo, BL, kind of mystery stuff within like the early 2000s, like late 90s, early 2000s, what you would expect from these genres. But it's about a high school delinquent who has a big fat crush on the student council president, who is like Mr. Perfect, high grades, pretty boy. And our delinquent's a little bit of an oddball. He's got bright pink hair and that he dyes, right? And black nails, and you know, he's this tough guy, but then as soon as he sees Oscar, the boy he likes, he's just like the most soft-hearted, pure maiden, who's just like 100% romantic, and he's just like he just wants his feelings to be acknowledged, and he just really cares about this other boy. And then Oscar, he's kind of a little bit, he's friendly and sweet and conscientious, but he's a bit standoffish from other people. He doesn't really have a lot of personal relationships, except for this girl who's the strongest female fighter in the area. They've known each other a long time, and you discover that Oscar, this, you know, perfect high grades student council president, he's kind of harboring this dark secret wherein at night he goes along with this girl that is his friend, and their third member, who's like this ghostly boy that's attached to this girl, and they kind of stop monsters and things that are terrorizing the students and the people of the whichever area they're in. And there might be a larger issue that Oscar is trying to stop or fight against that makes him unwilling to connect with other people, because he doesn't want to hurt others, but also hurt himself and suffer the grief of losing people important to him. Ooh, this is a good comic. I like Psycho Inc.'s work anyway. I had read a lot of this series before, but I never completed it. It was available digitally, as I said. It was also published online and in singles. This is such a quirky little, homage to some really wonderful tropes of manga that were like this more interesting, like this captures a lot of what was late 90s, early 2000s shoujo, of like a mysterious person who has a secret, and there's might be some horror elements, there's something maybe supernatural going on, kind of Pet Shop of Horror like maybe, but also, you know, destined lovers almost, and working to show your feelings to the people important to you. It's just, oh, I like it. And if you're interested, I think there might be still copies on... I don't know if there's copies on Psycho Inc.'s website. There was certainly copies at Glacier Bay Books for a while, so I don't know how many people picked it up there. But if it sounds like your thing, if you like this sort of story, check it out. Pick it up. It's well worth it. Really interesting to see the art evolve as well over the 6 years that it was being published. It's a good time, and I love this art book. It's so nice. It's so pretty. Yeah, great little series and great little comic. Check it out. Another BL comic, I guess maybe that's the way to describe it. This was originally released in Chinese. Yep, Chinese. And it's completed in 3 volumes. This is the entire series of the English release. So this is God Station's Sanctify, which is about a exorcist, middle-aged exorcist who is working this case where a bunch of people are being, ritualistically sacrificed. Their whole families, wife, kids, everything. And he's been brought in to cleanse the area and just trying to figure out what's going on, who's doing this, trying to prevent more people getting murdered. And he comes across, or one of the police officers who is working the case, he's very proactive and kind of attaches himself to this exorcist, and there might be something more going on. They might have a closer connection that they never realized. So, first off, this series is kind of... this isn't a light read, first and foremost. This is very much in the same wheelhouse as something like Intense manhwa, or what's it called? In These Words, which is another Chinese English doujin ongoing work. Sanctify. First of all, violence and gore. It's pretty heavy. There is the torture and murder of children in this series by bad guys, by bad people, but it's full on. And if you're not this is not a fluffy sweet romance. This is a messed up tragedy of circumstance and fate and second chances, right? Oh, it leans into the Christian or Catholic imagery so hard. Sanctify is the perfect name for it. And so why are all of these ritualistic murders that are happening now? Maybe they're tied to this horrific mass murder of an orphanage from 45 years ago. What's the connection there? Oh my god. Okay. And then also this series, it's not a happy ending for the couple, right? This is a tragedy. There's a hint that maybe there's a sequel, maybe there's potential for more down the line, but this is complete in the 3 volumes. And it's kind of left a little bit open-ended, a bit of a what if situation. But yeah, this isn't a happily ever after. In some ways it kind of is. There's a really heartfelt resolution from a really tragic situation. But yeah, this isn't like light reading. It's full on. The art is gorgeous though, so, and it's also not explicit. Oh, well, actually, no, that's a lie. The bonus chapters at the end, first of all, warnings for dubious consent. All of it is like typically dream sequences and stuff, so like, you know, it's not actually bad, quote unquote, but you know, it's pretty dubious. But yeah, it's very, very good if you don't mind some fucked up shit in your BL or anything, comics, then maybe give it a shot. Again, I liken it to In These Words or Intense, or even Twittering Birds Never Fly to a certain extent. This isn't a happy story, but it's a good one. Yeah, check it out if it sounds interesting to you. You can buy the English edition from God Station directly, and they're beautiful. They're beautiful editions. So yeah, check it out. On to light novels. Oh my gosh, so much still to go. I'm sorry, this video is going to be so long. But I haven't read this one yet, but I'm looking forward to it. I've read a chunk of the original series. This is a spin-off, sort of alternate version of Sword Art Online Progressive, Volume 1 by Reki Kawahara. This is a retelling of the original Sword Art Online from Asuna's perspective. Kawahara has spoken about it as kind of his second attempt of this storyline and an opportunity for him to fix some of the major issues that his original work had. You know, he was a much newer and younger writer when he first initially published Sword Art Online. So, you know, over time he's evolved, he's become more aware of like the issues and things that he'd want to change, and I appreciate that. I've seen the first film for Progressive. I liked it a lot. Again, I've become such a Sword Art Online apologist in my old age, but I do actually think it's pretty decent. Like, it gets a lot of slack, and it's not like it gets a lot of criticism that because, you know, it's very popular. It popularized a lot of tropes that are now ubiquitous, and like there is criticisms definitely, but it's not nearly as bad as what people say. And I like Asuna a lot. I think she's a great character. I like her story within Progressive, like how she found herself in the situation that she was stuck in this video game, despite not being someone who ever really played video games prior to SAO. And then her perspective, especially compared to Kirito, who was like a quote-unquote gamer, who like knew what to expect, or like at least understood the functions of how video game structure themselves and what they expect. Asuna never had that, and so it's interesting to see that difference and more relationships with her as the foundation, her friendships and the important people in her life prior and during meeting Kirito. So it's like I haven't, as I said, I haven't read this, but I've seen the film, and or one of the films. So I actually really enjoyed it. It's made me keen to jump into this one. I have a couple other volumes from this particular series just because of sales and stuff. So it's a chunky book also. Like, this is a thick one. But yeah, I look forward to it. Well, bath time, Asuna. Yeah, so it's just like a different version of Sword Art Online, but perhaps more interesting. And I feel like maybe there's potential that if you didn't like the original SAO, or you had issues with it, maybe progressive is the way to go, because it does reframe a lot of that and give a little bit more agency to our main female character as well. I don't know. I think Kawahara is pretty self-aware and does actively try to improve and respond to good-natured criticism, and he works hard. He seems like a decent guy, and I wish him all success, which he's certainly found, so it's neither here nor there, but I do look forward to reading this one. We have the second light novel of Sarasazanmai by Kunihiko Ikuhara and Teruko Utsumi. I haven't read the first one yet. I think this is just a rewrite, or it's a reinterpretation, retelling, that's the word I'm looking for, of the Sarasazanmai show. I'm a big Ikuhara fan again. Not a surprise for people who followed the channel for a long time. This is a quirky story of 3 high school boys who... Are they high school boys? Maybe they're middle school boys. Doesn't really matter. 3 young boys who are all in very different situations, who are kind of friends, kind of not. Some are closer than others, but all 3 get roped into this ongoing conflict between otters and kappa, and turn into kappa, and there's some shenanigans. And it's namely about human connections and relationships in your life and how you value other people, which is pretty much all of Ikuhara stuff anyway. Sarasazanmai is maybe a bit out there for a lot of people, the show especially, because it really does lean into the kappa element of it, which means it leans into the butt stuff. But yeah, I really enjoy Ikuhara's works. I really enjoy novelizations of his stuff, and although I haven't started Sarasazanmai yet, I doubt that I will dislike it, because I enjoy the show so much. And I enjoy the manga and all the other things that come with it. Check it out, and check out the show, especially if you haven't seen it yet and you are an Ikuhara fan. It's very, very good. I mean, all of his stuff is very, very good, so that's not even saying anything, but it is very, very good. Speaking of Ikuhara novels, we have the third and final novel of Penguin Drum, again by Kunihiko Ikuhara and Kei Takahashi. Well, this is by Kei Takahashi. So, based off of Ikuhara's premise, and then, expanded. It's a retelling of the Penguin Drum anime. I love Penguin Drum. It's probably my favorite of Ikuhara stuff. So both this and the previous novel are the final of these novelizations. They're not super duper long. But for Penguin Drum, I don't have the second volume yet, so I can't read this one until I get volume 2. I've had volume 1 for a long time, and I need to... I've read that one, so that's good, but I need to get the second one. But this one was at my local comic shop, so I decided to pick it up then, best opportunity, right? So, this is the story of 3 siblings, 2 brothers and a sister, who after their sister collapses and is pronounced dead, but then she is possessed by the spirit of the Princess of the Crystal, something along those lines, which shows itself in a quirky penguin hat, and then penguins show up, and there's it's Ikuhara. There's a whole bunch of stuff going on, but again, it talks about love, and also generational trauma is a big thing in all of Ikuhara's stuff, and that is certainly the case in Penguin Drum. So yeah, I love the anime. The novelization of what I've read so far is very good. Manga's good. It's all good. It's all good. Can't go wrong with Ikuhara yet again. Next we have the most recent volume of Baccano, 1935, A Deep Marble by Ryogo Narita. One of my favorite light novel series. I'm behind though. Like, I feel really bad because I'm probably 2 or 3 volumes behind now at this point. And in saying that, I will be able to catch up really quickly. Baccano is a very easy read. I love the characters. I love all the crazy hijinks that they get into. They're all so dastardly, but I adore them. I love this mix of just weirdos. They're great. Oh, they're so good. One day I want another Baccano anime. I love the original as well, but like, it would be so good to have a longer extended version. But yeah, that's neither here nor there. I'm always so thankful that Yen Press put together this series. Like, they licensed it. I'm just so, and they do such like lovely hardcovers as well for Baccano. As a fan, I'm just grateful, incredibly grateful. Check it out if you've enjoyed the anime but you want more. The novels are so good. They're so good. Do yourself the favor and read them because they're just beyond fantastic. I think there's 22, maybe 23 volumes in Japanese, so we're slowly catching up. Only a couple more till we're caught up, and then it's been on hiatus for ages. And from my understanding, because obviously I don't follow the fan translations or anything, my understanding is that Narita only really needs like a couple more books to finish up the storyline and like wrap it all up, which would be great. But he's been focusing on other series, other different stuff, a lot of Durara things. He has his eggs in many baskets, which is not a bad thing, but I want more Baccano. I will be good and be patiently waiting. And anyway, I have 3 or 4 volumes to read already, so I really probably shouldn't be demanding for more before I actually get to reading. Oh my god, we finally got to the end. Oh god, this is such a long video. So this is a Danmai novel. This is the second half of this series. I haven't read it yet. It is so long. It's probably close to 600 pages. Thick book. This is In the Dark, Volume 2 by Jin Shisi Chai, with translation by Beans. This was released in digital and print by Peach Flower House. This is the story of a police detective and a criminal profiler / artist. I've read the first one, but I don't really remember their specific titles or anything. Who kind of get entangled with each other as there's like ongoing cases. There's a lot of strange mysteries and ongoing murders that they have to solve together. And then there's a larger mystery of our main character. What is his background? Is he truly who he says he is? It's good. Like, it's a compelling kind of modern cop case kind of series, compared to like some of the more popular Danmai, which is, the Modal Zushis of this world and Tianguan Sifu and whatever else, cultivation novels. This is not that. There's no magical flying swords in this, but it's pretty interesting. I'm a sucker for, like, I I don't like propaganda, but I do like true crime stuff and like mystery stuff. So I'm finding it interesting. I think there's a lot of really solid stuff. Like this is a pretty popular series from my understanding, at least in like the Danmai circles. I'm looking forward to Peachflower House's other titles. Little Mushroom is going to be released very, very soon, which I've heard nothing but good things about. That's a sci-fi. So, you know, I'm trying to broaden my experiences and my reading within this somewhat new genre and medium for me. Obviously, like, I read a lot of novels, both translated and otherwise, but like with most of the world, I only really discovered Danmai over the last year and a half, 2 years maybe. And it's only a market that's recently kind of broken in to the English side to great success, which is fantastic. But this one doesn't, I don't think it has like any adaptation or anything, so it's not as popular from that compared to, again, to like the Grandmaster of Diabolic Cultivation or Demonic Cultivation, or, you know, Heaven Official's Blessing, or even Scum Villain Self-Saving System, or even Priests stuff. Like, I know nothing about Priests' work, but I know that, like, they're very popular. Word of Honor, that has a live action adaptation. So there's lots of Danmai stuff that has either a donghua animated adaptation or like a live action adaptation, and I don't think In the Dark has. Feel free to correct me. I'd actually really be interested in watching it if it does. But yeah, haven't gotten into this one yet. Just, it's, look at that. Look how thick. There's so much. It's so much. But I'm always happy to support small publishers, just generally. But small publishers within like small niches as well. So yeah, I look forward to completing the series once I get into this one. Everything. Oh my god, there's so many books. I can't believe I made it till now. If you've sat through this whole video, wow, you deserve a medal. Like, I know I say that almost every month, but that was a lot to sit through. Congrats. But in saying that, there's so much stuff. Of course I had to talk at length about everything. Let me know your thoughts, feelings, opinions on anything that I spoke about, the things you agree with or totally disagree with. I appreciate them both. Have you heard of some of these titles that I talked about, especially like mainstream publishing titles, whether that be the Kickstarter Yuri or like small press Danmai, or some of these non-Japanese comics, as well as like some of the ongoing stuff, things that just finished. Have you like ever bought the entirety of a series because you enjoy a creator's other work, sight unseen? I think that's a pretty universal experience for a lot of manga fans. I don't know, you tell me. But yeah, oh my god, I need to rest my voice because I've been talking non-stop for hours. So yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, if you're wanting to follow me on social media, my link will be in the description below. You can also, if you are subscribed to the channel, you can follow the monthly podcast that I have with my good friend Ray from Whimsical Pictures. This month's is Kaoru Mori Author Spotlight, and should be out hopefully by the time this video is out. We'll see. We left it very late in the month. Otherwise, you can also follow this channel for art book videos or first impressions and reviews when I do them on the odd occasion. And yeah, you can follow me on Twitter and other such things if you're wanting more of my opinions, right? But yeah, thank you guys so much for watching. Look after yourselves, stay kind, stay healthy, just be good to each other, and I will catch you in the next video. Bye till then.